Hi, everyone. It's Amanda Rieger Green. Welcome to Soul Sessions. Today, I've got a special returning guest, Hannah Francie, and she is an astrologer who I have followed for years. What I love about Hannah is she knows her stuff. She knows her stuff. She speaks it from her soul, but she is so accessible and relatable when it comes to thinking about and incorporating astrology into our lives and then looking at our natal charts so we can really create a simple and accessible roadmap to navigate all the shifts, twists, and turns that we encounter in our day to day and do it with greater grace and ease. Welcome back, Hannah.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm so excited to talk about 2025 with you.
Me too. 2025 is a big year, numerologically,
Mhm.
astrologically, energetically. I mean, we've been in a big year in 2024, but I feel like 2025 breaks the mold a bit. What do you think about 2025 and some of the astrology and energy?
100%. Yeah. And I was actually listening to your most recent podcast episode, and you were talking about 2025 representing the number nine in numerology. And I thought that just the connections there when numerology and astrology meet, it's a lot of clearing space. We have those outer planets, Uranus and Neptune, entering different signs, and Pluto, of course, has just moved. And then by 2026, with that number one year, then it's like, oh, a whole new era. So 2025 is really, I think, a great year to prepare, clear space, integrate, go within. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited for it.
Me too. Me too. And I love that you recognize the numerology and the code, the dialogue that the astrology and numerology creates. To me, it feels so divinely orchestrated. It's like the universe is rooting for us, even though it's like, okay, there's change coming. There are
Mhm.
going to be big shifts. And what you just said about going within where our sovereignty is, our empowerment is, and 2024 has done a number on many of us. I know for me, on really recognizing my power, but from this higher place, which I'm a pretty spiritual person and in tune with those things. I know you are as well. But I've seen a lot of shifts and changes with people really recognizing their agency, their authority, and 2024, just a little bit of recap and reminder for everybody with the energy of the eight in numerology, we learn through polarity. And that's one of the first things Hannah and I are going to jump into is polarity of the nodal axis shift. It's one of the first big things that happens, but learning through polarity. So for me, when I feel disempowered or disengaged or disillusioned, exhausted, run down. It's recognizing it, honoring it, and processing it, but also knowing that my body, my soul is asking me to draw in that polarity of empowerment, engagement, creativity, spontaneity, whatever the polarity, vitality, really
Mhm.
finding new ways of simplifying to create greater vitality, more quality. So let's dive
Mhm.
in and talk about the nodal axis shift.
Mhm.
And the nodal axis, for all of you out there, this is the north and the south node of the moon. The north node has been in Aries, and the south node has been in its polarity of Libra. So we've had tons of lessons around individuality and how we relate to people. And the pull is the north node where we're going as a collective. And it's been more around our individuality, our mighty I am. I have a good friend, Hannah, and she always says she's a Libra like me,
Mhm.
but her motto is stand up for yourself and not against the other person. And to me, that
Mhm.
feels very much like North Node in Aries, South Node in Libra, really gaining our voices, yet incorporating the other in respectful, diplomatic ways, but not compromising as much or being nice for the sake of the peace or being nice and pushing down our own needs, truth, beliefs, whatever that may be.
I love that. That's so beautiful from what your friend shared. It makes so much sense.
It's been one of
Uh,
those mantras that I play in my head, especially as a Libra of, am I compromising because I just would rather not have the conflict? Or am I speaking my truth in a loving and also strong,
mm,
courageous way? And Aries gives me the courage. So let's talk
mm.
about the nodal shift into the North Node transiting into Pisces and the South Node transiting into Virgo. It's polarity. And this happens in January. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it begins from the 11th of January for another, so for 18 months, basically. And I slightly want to backtrack a little bit with it because, firstly, I picked up on that word that you said at the beginning about the roadmap. And I feel as if as we come to the end of 2024 and we enter 2025, Mercury being in Sagittarius, the retrograde, is an opportunity for us to review that very roadmap, to look back and see, right, where are we coming from? And from that understanding, from that recognition, we can have a fair idea of where we want to go. So that's been really useful for us. And then Mars retrograde as well, coming into the new year. The really fascinating thing about Mars retrograde, I think, is when it turns direct, it will be Pisces season. And then the North Node will be in Pisces. So what we see here is an opportunity for us to kind of dive in. This is about, I feel, emotional regulation and really thinking about how we can nurture ourselves, support ourselves, and equally too, we think about family and home with cancer, of course. It will be important though for us to slow down and to really consider, our choices, our options, things like that, especially given with Mercury and Jupiter at the moment with their retrograde motions. I hope I'm not going too off track here, but just interestingly, Jupiter's retrograde in Gemini, Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius, again, a lot of choices. So very good for us to review. So therefore, with the nodes, back to the nodes, the fascinating thing I think about the North Node in Pisces is that we have an opportunity to really go within, to dive deeper into our unconscious, to go through these renewals and to reset. It's like a resetting period, especially when we align that a bit with that 9 number that, of course, you brought up as well. So that's really fascinating. But at the same time, with the South Node being in Virgo, a lot of this is about our body. It's about those healthy decisions and choices we make. There's one part of it where the North Node in Pisces says spiritual awareness. I think about even our connection with divinity, spirituality. A lot of people are really starting to question these things. But then with Virgo, it's more about, okay, well, how do I actually feel within my body and which choices am I making so that I can live a healthier sort of lifestyle? So it's trying to, in a way, combine the two. Naturally, with the South Node in Virgo, there can be that tendency of fixing compulsively, to jump in and fix. And
That's
we
a
might
really good
fuss.
way to put it. Fixing compulsively. And you and I chatted a little bit before we started recording, reflecting on the Virgo that's in my chart. And
Mm,
that is one of those things where I'm like, oh, we get to look forward to healing this rather than, oh gosh,
mm,
it's going to flare up, because it will flare up. So it's in front of us, almost exacerbated, but fixing compulsively. What a beautiful
mm,
way to articulate that.
yeah. And I think it can be where, we fuss. When do we fuss? When do we worry unnecessarily? And when can we be a bit pedantic? I think Virgo at times can get caught up in details that really, with North Node and Pisces, the North Node and Pisces says, does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? You may think it does, but maybe it doesn't right now. Let's try and expand it a bit. And let's try and not control or fix in that way. And maybe step back a little bit and to, hey, you know what, go with the flow with Pisces,
Yeah.
flow a little bit with versus Virgo.
Which it's so interesting for that energy and that that energetic signature to really motivate us to go with the flow. And that's a statement that we all say, yet it's one of those things for me. I know when I'm in the flow because things are easy, things are fluid,
Mm.
even challenging or dysfunctional circumstances, relationships, work, family, whatever may be coming up. If I am centered internally and trusting, and what you just said about, is it really that important in the grand scheme of things? That's beautifully said, to remember to zoom out. A lot of us get so focused on the minutia and the details that we make it our world, and then it writes a program that exacerbates it. Being able to step back. And you know what that makes me think about, Hannah, is remembering back to the pandemic and how we were forced to reprioritize, reorganize our lives. And it was from drastic change and all sorts of collective trauma. I mean, a world shift, but so many people enjoyed being at home. And there were times, obviously, the converse of that, where we went a little mad, a little nutso, but we reorganized and reprioritized things. And I know so many people came out of that more clear and true around what they enjoy and having space and balance.
Yeah, I love that because it makes me think about with Jupiter and Saturn. So they will still square one another coming into 2025 as well. And that square is that opening square between Jupiter and Saturn, and that great conjunction happened in 2020, when when the pandemic hit. So the way I sort of view it is Saturn in Pisces is pointing toward how we can strengthen our spiritual gifts and even just focusing on our emotional well-being. So in a way, Saturn's already been ushering in these themes and putting in the work, making time for ourselves in this regard. And then the North Node is basically just going to come along and support that in a way, but also just usher in more themes to do with those spiritual elements. And then Jupiter being in Gemini with that square, we've also seen I would say, the scatteredness, the jittery behaviors, nervousness, fantasies, building castles in the sky a little bit. So I think with the square, things are going to become a lot more clearer. I think it's just important for people to slow down and to really ask themselves, what are my intentions and what do I want going into this next new era? Because the new era is going to be, as you were talking about at the beginning, it's very different. We have Uranus being in an earth sign, Pluto being in an earth sign. And what we notice with Uranus and Pluto were things to do with people in positions of power, money, greed, things like that. So those planets are going to take on a whole new element, a whole new form, with Pluto in Aquarius, this air sign, Uranus in Gemini, another air sign. It's about the people, I think. Really, this is about an awakening. I see personally 2025 and beyond as the great awakening, because they're tuned in, they're questioning, even with those things you mentioned about the pandemic. There's a lot of misinformation and things like that. And we've seen this intensify over the years, but we've also seen equally people going, hold on, why?
Yeah, that curiosity, especially having Jupiter in Gemini. And then once we have Uranus starting to touch Gemini and come in and move from
Mhm.
Taurus, where we can get, I love Taurus and I love the steadiness of Taurus, but Gemini changes the mind, changes the game.
Mm.
And of course, one of the beautiful cornerstones of Gemini is curiosity. So people asking questions, do I believe that? Is that really true? Or is that true for me? And I've seen that in so many people, and it can be frightening in the sense that long held belief systems or values or things that we've been taught or shown or modeled in our society, in our family of origin, our environments, people are gaining this greater curiosity and willingness to explore things. Maybe not quite sure yet what they trust, know, or believe, but knowing that something is changing, and that uncertainty also creates a little bit of unrest
Sure.
internally, externally, because things are changing, friendships, relationships, jobs, whatever. And then the bigger picture. So, like you said, slowing down a bit, finding our center, our stillness within, the prayer, the meditation, getting out in nature, shoot, getting a manicure. My big thing is do your spirituality simply. And I remember years ago, I look back to getting like a manicure or pedicure and being on my phone and answering questions or doing 25 things rather than just sitting in the massage chair for 35 minutes and relaxing. And I started to do that years ago and to just enjoy 30, 40 minutes of time. And then that snowballed into other ways I could become more present, more aware, and still, and use the gift of the present moment.
I love that. I feel like what you just explained is so representative of that Jupiter square Saturn. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. I mean, you're so right. We do live in this very frantic, just now society, and everything's so instant. And I was thinking about with even Neptune entering Aries in 2025, and of course Saturn following shortly after. And I was thinking of Neptune as addiction, so I think a big part even of Saturn joining up will be about delayed gratification. Maybe what we could see is some kind of new beginning to do with this addictiveness that we have, especially to social media. Like as you were saying, we were getting your manicure, but yet, you were thinking about your phone and other things. And it just shows that we can really be like that as a society. And I know myself, I can be like that. Even with Gemini, that part of it, there's multiples, just so many open tabs and things like that. But yeah, I think with Aries, it's like the beginning of a new cycle because, Aries is all about new beginnings. And maybe we will see greater, maybe discipline on our parts, greater self control as well, especially if it is that there are any, certain addictive tendencies or certain habits that we want to shift. And hey, we bring it back to the nodes with the South Node and Virgo, North Node in Pisces. Maybe that by leaning a little bit into the South Node in Virgo, we can draw from those gifts of like, okay, is this healthy for me? Is this good for me? Kind of pull from different areas of the placements of the stars, if you will.
It's funny, this morning when I got up, I've been traveling, so my schedule has been a little bit off, and I love my routine, my schedule, but I can also be addicted. I noticed myself missing my morning routine, and I love spontaneity. I love busting up routines, but I was very aware in my travels the last few weeks of how in my mind I was thinking, I should be doing this. I need to be doing this. I need to be eating this. I'm not taking these supplements. That's part of the beauty of my health and wellness. But I also noticed my addiction to my routines and my health and wellness and the fear that was coming up. Oh, Amanda, you're not going to have these supplements or this routine. So isn't that ironic? I mean, that was one of the key takeaways. And I kept laughing at myself on my travels because I kept thinking, Amanda, you have everything you need. You're fine. Can't you just ease into the moment? And so that's what I was reflecting on this morning and kind of laughing, as I got up and I was doing my meditation and journaling and being grateful to be home, but then laughing at how I can be addicted to the healthy things in an unhealthy way. Does that make sense? I know it sounds a little nutso, but that's the awareness that I feel like so many of us, what you're articulating, are going to come into awareness of our addictions and the more subtle addictions. If you don't have something going on where it is drugs, alcohol, screen time, relationships, more subtle addictions where we get obsessive compulsive in our mind or attached to something, and where we can maybe relinquish our control or our grip on the steering wheel. That's always the way I think of it, like holding 10 and 2 really tightly on the steering wheel, like it's pouring down rain or snowing and you've got to keep control, or versus like relaxing on a sunny day and just turning the music up and rolling the windows down.
Yes, yes. And that is so true because it is very Virgo, that like the compulsiveness, obsessive compulsiveness. And we even think about, from what you were saying, it's all of the self-help books and information out there. So there can be that addictiveness to self-help. And then you think about Virgo and can very much represent perfectionism. And it's like that within itself is like, you think you're imperfect, so you need to fix yourself, you need to be perfect. But to say that is to suggest that you're not perfect, but then it's a never ending loop and you're just going round and round. But Virgo, I think, is also about that self-containment. Virgo is, it's also about being able to say, do you know what, actually I am enough. I know for myself anyway, especially, and maybe selfishly speaking, my rising is in Virgo and then the seventh is in Pisces. So I can maybe get a feel for how the nodes shifting will influence me in a
That's a
helpful
big
way.
transit. And for those of you out there that aren't as aware of your natal chart, it's such a lovely time. Hannah on her website, Hannah's Elsewhere, has wonderful resources to help guide you through understanding your natal chart so you can see where the planets are moving. But what Hannah just articulated for herself is with this axis shift, her north node will be transiting through her first house and the south node through her seventh house. So that gives her some awareness that some of her identity and control around her identity is going to be changing in some way. And then relationships are going to be highlighted. Seventh house. I love how you brought it back home. And for all of you out there, I hope that you can find where the nodal axis are in your chart, where Virgo and Pisces are, especially the late degrees, because when the nodal axis shift, and for those of you out there who aren't as proficient yet in some of your degrees and the way astrology works, the funny thing about the nodes is, and I'm going to just say this simply, it's like they move backwards. So as the node shifts from Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, into Pisces, it's moving backwards. So it's not moving into 0 degrees of Pisces, it's moving into 29.59 degrees of Pisces. So it starts to move backward in that direction. And the same with Virgo, 29 degrees of Virgo and I mean onward.
Yeah. And what I'm also thinking here about would be, so especially with the North Node coming into Pisces, right? So one of the rulers would be Neptune. So Neptune coming into Aries. So that's, it's interesting because we have the eclipse season happen at the same time. There's also Mercury retrograde in Pisces and Aries, Venus retrograde in Pisces and Aries. And to me, that retrograde season combined with the eclipse season is sort of like a preparation. It's getting our minds and our bodies ready for these next big shifts coming. And so to bring it back again to Neptune being the ruler of the North Node, Neptune coming into Aries, I see as, so if we think about our connection with divinity, if we think about like pure consciousness, what are the labels, the titles, the stories that we tell ourselves, and how do we attach to those things? Because I think with Neptune, there is that sort of dissolving quality. And also, hopefully, being able to, in combination with Pluto in Aquarius, to zoom out, to look at things more from a bird's eye view, to see that actually we do have connection with a higher power, with divinity. And it's just that our bandwidth is so, so short because of certain structures and what we've been told and, you know, the narratives that we tell ourselves. So I really think that the combination is sort of like a big rebellion. It's like a rebellion against anything that tries to tell us who we are and how to be. Yeah, freedom. It's this anthem of freedom because Aries and Aquarius are so much about independence.
Says Hannah, the sun sign in Aquarius. She's like, this is my language. And I shared with Hannah, and I've said this on the podcast before, my south node of the moon natally is in Aquarius. So, of course, I relate to that and am excited for how people show up and rebel, but rebel with compassion and rebel with an open heart and a
Mhm.
peaceful heart. All of this Neptunian and Piscean energy,
Mhm.
it's not about causing more chaos, violence, war, although we could
Mm.
see those things play out
Sure.
interestingly on the world stage. But how are we approaching our own rebellion more lovingly, inclusively,
Mm.
compassionately, and rebelliously in unprecedented ways, in breaking the mold and not even breaking a glass ceiling, breaking out into the cosmos. I know I sound mystical and esoteric when I say that, but it's almost like we don't know what we don't know. And isn't that exciting versus terrifying?
Mm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. And if you don't mind, so I have some information that I wrote down,
Yeah.
and the reason why I'm bringing it up is because of what you mentioned. We could see these potential violence acts as well with the alignments.
I'm like,
Just give
bring it
me
on,
a
Hannah. Whatever
moment.
you wrote down, share it with all of us because I'm sitting on the edge of my seat.
Okay, so what I'm about to say, really involves Uranus in Gemini and then Pluto in Aquarius, and perhaps I'll link it back to Neptune and Aries as I go along. Okay, so the last time Uranus was in the sign of Gemini was throughout the 1940s. And we saw the birth of people like David Bowie, Dolly Parton, and astrologer Liz Green. So this indeed was a generation who has certainly, had a way with words, and they have influenced the masses. But more significantly, the 1940s are widely remembered for World War II, the Holocaust, the Cold War, and atomic bombs. So we think about major advances and developments in technology, weaponry, communication, intelligence operations. But then interestingly, what followed from World War II was the third industrial revolution in the 1950s. So there was a growing focus on computer technology and electronics. Microwave ovens, color televisions were invented. And it's fascinating because even today, we're said to be experiencing the fourth industrial revolution. We think about AI and, the combination of robots with humans. But you see, the question then is, how does this information really translate to today's modern world? So the important thing then is to highlight that Uranus is the dispositor of Pluto in this case, because Uranus, of course, rules Aquarius, right? So Uranus is going to also show us something here. The last time these planets aligned in Gemini and Aquarius was around the 1780s. Now, was a time when the industrialization movement rapidly started to take the world by storm. And Uranus itself was discovered in 1781. So it's really interesting to think about with those alignments with Uranus being discovered, because I even think about changes to astrology itself. And maybe, it could even be taught in new ways, right? There could be
Right.
some interesting inventions that happen. And then to bring this back in with Neptune entering Aries, we mix it in. Perhaps a spiritual revolution and transformation is a potential manifestation of these cosmic shifts. So, my curiosity here is, will there be a greater push for humane technology practices? And I also think about this war on human consciousness more through this modern view. And is it a case of either being a part of the change or continuing to turn a blind eye to it? Because Neptune, I suppose, as well, can be like, you bury your head in the sand and
Yes.
you don't want to look at the reality of a situation.
Right. Like that escapism that comes with Neptune. And I know many of us have felt it because with Pisces and Neptunian energy, we are all very intuitive, energetic, electromagnetic, and psychic beings. Yet
Mm.
those qualities and attributes feel like they are coming online in such a rapid way that it's overwhelming, where it's like, I just can't. I can't even, whether it's just your day to day or, like you said, with things going on in humanity and the world
Mm.
stage. not burying our heads and really asking what we stand for and tapping into our wisdom. I love that you talked about this fourth industrial revolution. That's pretty brilliant, Hannah. And thinking about AI and how we ethically and humanely utilize, communicate with, and collaborate with AI without losing this incredibly unique divine spark that the actual our human technology has, and that human technology of loving our fellow neighbor and seeing people as individuals. I know for me that what is coming up, whatever anybody's beliefs are around sexuality or gender, those kinds of things, when that touches us personally, whether it's a friend's child or in a family, when we see it through the lens of it's personal, things like the personal element of our connection, it softens the heart, it opens the mind. And I feel like this revolution that's happening is incredible technology wise, and the advancements and rapid advancements that we have going on, and how you correlated it with the 40s and the 50s. And what's interesting, like you said, there's a spiritual revolution going on where we're seeing each other more intimately and personally. And for me, I'm going to really contemplate that in how am I showing up and doing this in my day to day with whatever is on my plate, but how am I connecting more personally so it feels more real or true? Does that resonate?
Definitely. And, it partly even makes me think about Jupiter itself because we explored with the North Node in Pisces, right? And one of the rulers is Neptune, but then the other ruler would be Jupiter. And so Jupiter's going to come into Cancer, and that's going to obviously activate your first house for you. But
Yes.
that's from June for the next year or so. And I feel like that Jupiter in Cancer sort of just speaks to what you said. It's more about that drawing from your inner wisdom, your emotional insight, and protecting those you love. I think a big conversations about family protection of those closest to us, especially if it is that, okay, there are rocky times ahead with 2025. How can we look after our loved ones? And I get that when it comes to that conversation, things can be difficult for certain people, but when we really draw back and think about who we want to protect and keep safe, maybe those themes will be highlighted.
Well, and with these themes, it's interesting because while we have our family of origin, more and more of us are coming into our soul family, our soul tribe, our soul community. And
Yeah.
we get to have both. And that's a dialogue too of who are the intimate people in our life that are our ride or dies, the people that we believe in, whether they're messy or brilliant or both at any given time. And who do we stand by, why, and how do we show up, and then how do we allow them to show up for us? I know for me that's been such a growth spurt, is asking for help and receiving it, rather than thinking I have to do everything on my own, or they're too busy, or I've got this, I'm going to figure it out. Just sticking in my own myself and my ego and old coping or protective mechanisms, really allowing people to see us more fully. And I had a woman years ago when I worked in hospice, and she was our bereavement counselor, and she was brilliant, incredible in what she did with families and loved ones, and grief counseling through the process of death and dying and on the other side of it. And she was sitting in my office one day, and we were talking about asking for help and letting people love on you. And she said something to the effect of, Amanda, when you're messy, when the chips are down, when things are difficult, and you let people see that mess or that pain and suffering, and you invite them in, she said it creates endearment. And that was one of those light bulb moments, because I'd already seen that happen in my life. And funny enough, Jupiter was in Cancer during this conversation, because I know it was like
Wow.
2012, 2013, somewhere up in that frame. And that's the last time Jupiter was Gemini, Cancer, right in that ballpark. Jupiter was in Cancer, and she said, that's what creates endearment, Amanda. That's when you know how connected you are. It's a privilege for someone to hold space and to be allowed to see you. And up until then, I had seen it through the lens of I, me, and realizing that allowing someone to support me during my struggle, it was an honor to them, recognizing that they were a part of that equation too. It wasn't just about Amanda. So Jupiter and Cancer, I love that you've tied that in, because I'm like, oh yes, this sweetness, this gentle, the nurture, that's nurture. And nurture, I think in our society, I know for myself, I've done this. I don't need nurture. I'm good. I'm good. You know, that's too gentle. When we tend to be so strong and driven, but nurture is a huge part of our psychology, and human experience.
100%. And to think that Jupiter will trine the North Node along its path. So, even more of the reason to really think about, okay, well, honestly, how am I feeling? How am I doing? You know, even I think about with the sextile to the South Node at the same time with Virgo. And Virgo with the South Node there, even if I was to draw from myself as an example, I can be like that where I don't need help from other people. I've got this, I can help myself. So perhaps what could come up for me personally, or perhaps even collectively, of course, would be to be able to step back and really ask, do I need some support from other people? To me, what I'm getting from this really is like 2025 is a big emotional cleanse. It's just,
Emotional
it's
detox and
intimate. Yeah,
level up.
detox.
And yeah, it's a detox. It's like root to rise energy, where
Yeah.
it's healing toxic emotions and chemical reactions in the body that are not maybe
Mhm.
even solely from our experience in this timeline, in this lifetime, that are in our genetics, in our DNA. So some of it, for me and for many that I've talked to, we are clearing out old trauma in the human genome. So some of this stuff we signed up for, everybody, it's like we have stuff in our cells and DNA that we aren't even aware of that creates fear and pain and trauma. So these times are unprecedented, and we came into this life for this great awakening, like you said, and we're
Mm.
in it. We're in
Yeah,
it.
it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's certainly exciting. Yeah. And so just personally speaking, I mean, I've been in psychotherapy for 5 years,
Yeah.
and I am so grateful for those experiences. And it just makes me think that when it comes to family, when it comes to the past and our conditioning, there is a lot there. And oh my goodness, to take, especially with Saturn being in Pisces, taking responsibility. Because you have to kind of think too, it has to stop somewhere. You
Yeah.
know, it has to go. You have to kind of reflect and think, well, why, why do I feel this way? What's going on with me? Reflection, contemplation with Pisces. And then that can be really powerful and significant for us in the next step forward. But I guess the thing is that it's not, I get that it's not so black and white either. Oh my goodness, it's hard to look within. It's hard to address our shadow, to look at traumas, grief, things like that. It's a journey, that's for sure.
I was having a conversation with some women that I'm close to last night, and we were talking about the alchemy of taking personal responsibility, essentially. And at first, when I began to do that, I've been in recovery a long time, and that was 2012, 2013. I was so afraid to get honest about my pain and trauma and darkness and my messiness and where I had caused harm to myself and others. But once someone held space for me to do that work, like you were talking about what you've experienced, and I started to do the shadow work and dive in and own the darkness, the alchemical process happened. And today, I was laughing about this because this is my example, my personal example. about 2 years ago, I was sitting in an airport and it had just been a series of mishaps. My Uber driver got in a wreck. I missed my flight, this, that, and the other. And I wasn't ungrateful. I was glad I was safe. I was glad I was getting home. And I kept saying, what am I feeling right now? I could not for the life of me figure it out. And then all of a sudden it was like, Amanda, you're feeling sorry for yourself. You're feeling self pity. And for a minute, I was like, ew. And then all of us, of a sudden, I said, Eureka, it's self pity. And then once I identified it, the work began. And I started noticing the self pity like a freaking snowball in the months ahead, showing up in my day to day, where before it hadn't been in my conscious awareness or cognizant to me. So taking that responsibility for victimhood, martyrdom, self pity, Pisces, Pisces, Pisces.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't aware until I was aware. But then when I'm aware of something or we're aware, it's what we do with it. And I think coming back to that rebellious nature, that compassionate rebellion that we were discussing, Pluto in Aquarius and these other planetary shifts, they are supporting us in seeing things that have not been available to us to recognize. And what are we going to do with them? What are we going to do with them? How are we going to heal them and be these wonderful wizards or alchemists of this new divine era?
100%. I love it. Because when we bring it back again to Aries, Aries is the warrior. Aries is like, right, let's do this. So Saturn even comes in and joins up with Neptune and actually supports us. It
Yeah.
kind of says, you know what? You're actually going to do the work. You're not just going to dream about it, wishful thinking about it. You're also actually going to do something with this. I feel like it's going to be really, really exciting on so many levels when it comes to just changing our growth, identity changes, just transformation all in all. Of course, yes, so the way I sort of see it is the first half of the year, it's just like full steam ahead, boom, boom, boom. But then the second half, all the retrogrades begin, and it's like, right, okay, slow down, integrate, and then we can sit with anything. And then by 2026, then really the new era awaits.
And like you said, with the numerology, we are in a 9 year in 2025, a 1 year in 2026. So we are reflecting and creating closure from all of the lessons learned. Yes, over the past decade, 9 years, but it feels like we are doing this cleansing, detoxification personally and universally from eons, millions of years of human evolution and accumulation, but also from our present vantage point, we are truly being rewired and reworked and upgraded. And the power is, how am I taking responsibility and bringing in the Aries energy of the courage to do it, the courage to be, the courage to be all that you are. First of all, I have to say, and I hope everyone hears this, that I've stated this before, the next couple of years are mythic, not apocalyptic, because there can be that doomsday fear that comes up with all of this change and what could happen, because we have tons of probabilities and possibilities, but it's the orientation within that helps us to create and co-create this beautiful new paradigm shift individually and as a collective. And Hannah and I are both like, we're here for this. I mean, us just talking, we're both like, yes, these are the kind of friendships, connections, relationships that can look at this stuff, be honest, and help each other to take accountability and support each other through our quantum leaps, because it feels like this is a very condensed energy that it's quantum leaping us, whatever the heck that means. That's what I feel like. We're doing this giant leap and it's happening now, and I'm here for it. And hopefully everyone out there listening is getting that revitalization of curiosity and excitement to be part of this incredible revolution of humanity and our experience and this planet.
Definitely. Because I read, of course, through the information that I've written about the transits and everything else. But actually just sitting down with you and having a conversation, it hits different.
Yeah, it
It
hits.
feels different.
Hannah, same thing for me. I do a guidebook every year, and I've done just numerology to help people go month over month with the numerology. And I added some astrology in this year because some people were saying, can you add in a little bit of the astrology? And I didn't want to go deep into transits, but because we have so many planetary shifts, the eclipses, utilizing where the sun is, the full and new moons, it's simple, yet there is a code. But as I was going through all of it and writing and just channeling and tuning in, I was like, gosh, this is a lot. Wow, this is a lot. Whoa, that's a big shift. Oh gosh, okay, what does that mean? How do I communicate this? How do I encourage people to reflect on it? But now as it comes to like, and it was feeling heavy for me and
Mhm.
daunting a bit, even though I'm not scared. But now as I'm talking to you, I'm like, yes, there's upliftment and excitement. So it just hits home or reiterates the conversations and the community we create. We don't have to do this alone. Alone, we fall flat. We stay in 3D linear and in the dangerous neighborhood of my own mind because it can be dangerous. But when I connect with you, our energy is like, yes, okay, we don't know, but we know we're here for this. Like, we're not alone.
100%. And that's where I think Pluto in Aquarius really acts as like a big, massive theme. We think about Pluto being that main generational planet that
Yeah.
stays in the sign for the longest. And also Pluto being ushered in first. It's like, okay, yes, community, teamwork. What about your collective aims? How do you want to make the world a better place? But then equally, I think about Aquarius as sure, it's about community and groups, but it's also about individuality and independence and thinking along the lines of charity starts from home. You know, if you want to see these big collective shifts in the world, you also have to really think about how you're showing up. Then, as you were, rightfully saying, it's like that recognition of day to day action, those small things that you can do. And I even thinking about Neptune a little bit more. So the thing about this, I think, which is quite exciting because yes, Aries is new beginnings, right? It's this fresh, action orientated sign. But Neptune takes 165 years to travel through the entire zodiac. So this within itself is like the first of our lifetime. So it's pretty
Yeah.
huge. In a similar vein, yes, Pluto in Aquarius too, with the amount of time it takes Pluto to travel through all the signs. But what I think about here is the last time that Neptune was in Aries. So that was in the mid to late 1800s. So people like Beatrix Potter was born, Marie Curie, and Henry Ford. But they were pioneers. So they were pioneers within their own right. So could we see new poets, writers, illustrators, storytellers, chemists, scientists, engineers? Yeah, I think this could really be where the world just goes through this innovation. It's really a highly innovative time to act as trailblazers for the next generation. So it's going to be really interesting, I think, especially for children that are born
Yeah.
with that combination, of Pluto and Aquarius and then Neptune and Aries, and bring even Uranus and Gemini into that. Boom, that is really very innovative, inventive stuff. Creative.
Genius and
Hun-
bringing the genius to the masses, not the madness, the genius, and genius can borderline madness, of course.
Sure.
But we all know, we know that, but there's something electric, back to Uranus, to
Mhm.
the energy field, the electromagnetism of the energy field, and remembering that we are electromagnetics, and our hearts, it comes back to our hearts. I was talking with some people recently, and our brain emits a minute electromagnetic frequency compared to the heart. The heart
Mhm.
is the greatest electromagnetic frequency in our bodies, and we're discovering more and more intelligence in and around and with the organ of the heart. And when we talk about the heart chakra and heart opening, that energy in our body, how are we healing our hearts or living from our hearts, being these pioneers from the orientation of the heart. And I tell you what, Hannah, when I contemplate this a lot, because it's a feeling, right? It's a sensation, it's an opening.
Mm.
And can I believe that we can live in a world where poverty is eliminated? People have enough food, energy, resources, clean drinking water,
Mm.
safe and healthy places to live with this massive population that we have. And we can default into cynicism or, oh, that's not my problem. I don't have to
Mm.
think about it. Things that we've already
Sure.
discussed. But I feel like we're moving into this personal awareness where anything is possible. Let's live from that space. And I don't mean delusion, Neptune,
Mhm.
Pisces, but really believing so much, like infinitely greater and bigger, but from the heart.
Mm. Ah, your South Node in Aquarius is just wow, Amanda. You can feel it, and through how you communicate. I mean, what I'm even uh getting and trying to combine this in with a bit is things like sacred geometry, quantum mechanics, metaphysics. I think we're going to see more of those subjects. You know,
Yes.
even divination, natural magic, the occult, all those things. We're going to see more of this, that more of these things being talked about, but through a more scientific lens. I'm excited to see that.
Me too. The credibility. And I feel
Mhm.
like, yes, my South Node in Aquarius from other lifetimes in my soul, like numerology for me. It's that language of numbers
Mhm.
and frequency of numbers that I know, I see, and they break open something within me and other people. Astrology, the
Mhm.
language, it's that psycho spiritual language that also now is gaining traction and validation through scientific study and evidence. And
Mhm.
it's like for many of us, we're like, finally we can have some cred. And I don't even use the word woo woo. I'm not a big, I think it just kind of waters it down a little bit, but it's almost like the woo is getting the scientific backing and it's becoming normalized, and not in a way that infringes upon people's belief systems, their religion. It enhances that psycho spiritual component of our human makeup and our interconnection in ways that feel are becoming more valid or
Mhm.
validated and clarified. Even parts like
Mhm.
mysteries of the universe are becoming more scientifically clear and helping us to advance forward, to evolve.
Sure. Yeah, so it should be really, really exciting to see what else comes out. And even think about the research that's being done to do with aliens,
Yeah,
extraterrestrials. That's very Aquarius.
it is. And all the things that have either, oh, that doesn't exist. That back to that doesn't exist. I'm not sure about that. The dialogue and the discussion and the evidence coming through of, well, my goodness, we live in this vast universe. Do we truly believe that we are the only intelligent life form in this massive, massive universe? And what is going on? And also, not from a place of fear and invasion and Independence Day. You know, I go back to that original movie, Independence Day. They're going to invade and take over. I feel like there are many beings, extra dimensional beings, who have been aiding, supporting, helping us, and are rooting us on to see planet Earth and humanity awaken to its divinity, its
Mhm.
capabilities, but again, from this place of just interconnection and love, the
Mhm.
heart center.
I love that. It's the guidance that those beings provide.
Yeah.
That's that support. Yeah, I
It's
love it.
exciting. It's so exciting. It absolutely is. So one of the things, and I want to make sure I have some of these dates so I can
Mhm.
give everybody listening. Neptune will enter Aries, and that's at the end of March.
Yep.
Saturn enters Aries and it's not going to be there completely, but it's from late May to early September. Jupiter will enter Cancer in June, and Uranus enters Gemini in July. So I'll break this down in some other podcast episodes, but I wanted Hannah's insight, which she has articulated so clearly and beautifully, especially referencing us back to some of these major outer planet shifts that are once in a lifetime because their orbits are so vast and long time wise, temporally. These are big shifts that are once in a lifetime. And even though longevity is shifting and has been and is extending, these are once in a human lifetime experiences that we have not yet experienced. So there's this freshness, again, this Aryan energy of freshness, newness. We are here now for these quantum leaps.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Hannah, thank you for coming back onto Soul Sessions and sharing all of your expertise, but also your heart and your excitement and enthusiasm. I think both of us, and I know it translates, we're pumped up and motivated. And I hope that this has instilled some higher frequencies and excitement and encouragement for everyone out there to go deeper, to take your personal responsibility and to zoom out. Like Hannah said, learning to not get caught up in the details, to really, really recognize, is this important in the grand scheme of things? I love when you said that in the beginning. Is this important in the grand scheme of things? What does this really mean? What is my motive? Why am I doing this? What legacy am I leaving? And how can I do that each and every day from this place of connection in the heart? Anything else you want to add as we wrap up and close that you want to remind anyone or share?
I feel, well, maybe just one little extra thing, if that's okay.
Go for it.
So I was thinking about before Neptune and Uranus make their shifts, right? Because Neptune is still hanging out at the very end of Pisces,
Yeah.
Uranus at the end of Taurus. And this is just something that I've observed on social media, things like that. And I think what's fascinating is that what's been brought to light quite heavily would be things like shopping addiction and overconsumption. Um, Bursting the consumption bubble is something that I put down. And then also beauty standards, a lot of things to do with beauty standards. You notice these themes. I'm just going off, from what people are talking about online in those spaces. So I find those connections interesting because Uranus and Taurus highlights things like consumption, spending money, and then Neptune and Pisces can be that addictive quality and where we can be overly idealistic. So hopefully, when there are those moves off both planets, these kinds of concerns will be addressed in a whole different way. Maybe we'll see people questioning these matters more. And I think that's what we're starting to see. It's greater awareness, I guess, when it comes to those areas. Yeah.
You and I are energetically and telepathically on the same page. I'm a bit mind blown at the correlations and synchronicities. One thing that has been personally weighing on me that I've been contemplating and beginning to take clear action around. My husband and I lived in Belize for 3 years, and we moved to Belize. We were there during the pandemic. And really, the motivation was to simplify, to live in community with nature more closely, to pare down the materialism, the things. And we lived beautifully and simply. And we moved back to the United States when my mother was terminally ill. We bought a home, we moved her in. And I remember how it was very jolting to my system to come back into the consumerism of the Western world. And then inflation was just out of control. I mean, it was hard. I mean, I felt it on my senses. I felt it obviously in my bank account and the fear that comes with that. But just in the last 2 months, we're at a stage where we've recalibrated and rebalanced, and we're working to figure out what are the next steps. But everything in my heart says clean house, simplify. You don't need these things. And I know that I don't, but taking action and what all of that looks like. And we are actively figuring out how to downsize, to simplify. So it frees us up, frees me up, my husband and I up to be able to live life more fully and from the heart versus with the weight of the material world and
Mm.
money and finances. And I know other people have been feeling that, so that what you just, the note that you just closed on, hits personally home to me as I wrap up 2024. Much of my journaling is around taking the appropriate and healthy steps to align with my truth within, which is living a much more materially simple life. Now, I do like getting a manicure and my makeup, and I'm a Libra. I love the beauty element of things, but I also know that I can live on the same pair of denim cutoff shorts and tank top and a couple of pair of shoes and feel like the most abundant human on the earth. So I hope that that translates and resonates for all of you, is how you're simplifying so the material weight is not consuming the light of your heart, the
Mm.
infinite expansion of the heart space.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah. Well, Hannah, thank you for joining me on Soul Sessions and coming back. Everyone, you can find Hannah, hannahselsewhere.com. She's on YouTube. And as I've said before, she has the most incredible resources. She's prolific and quality oriented in what she offers. So, following her on YouTube, on Instagram, social media, checking out her website, and all of the offerings that she does have that are very accessible and very informative. Please be sure and connect with Hannah. Thank you all for joining us. And Hannah, I feel so uplifted today. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks for having me back. It was a great session.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone. Be well.